Welcome to Hidden Reality. Yes, you've seen normal people act crazy, but what happens when an insane person acts normal? That haunting observation comes from Katie Holmes, speaking to 17 magazine, and honestly, it instantly hooks us into one of the most terrifying mysteries in modern pop culture. Think about it. How exactly does a man who has exhibited deeply disturbing, highly public behavioral slips still remain the single most bankable movie star on planet Earth? Well, we're going to find out. What we're conducting here today in this explainer is essentially a psychological autopsy. Look, we're not here to rehash cheap tabloid gossip or rumor mill stuff. Instead, we're going to analyze these viral celebrity breakdowns as clinical evidence of a truly shocking psychological phenomenon. The source material paints a picture of the world's biggest movie star that exposes a reality completely hidden in plain sight. Section 1. When the mask slips. To truly understand the present, we need to transition back to the 2004 to 2005 era, a highly documented period where a carefully crafted, seemingly invincible public image began to very publicly fracture.
These PR catastrophes, they basically unfolded in rapid succession. In 2004, there were these alleged secret auditions, but they weren't for a movie role. They were to find him a girlfriend. Then early 2005 brought the infamous Oprah couch incident, where his bizarre performance of a man madly in love just looked utterly unhinged. Mid-2005 gave us that chilling 60 Minutes meltdown. And then, in 2008, a leaked internal video exposed what many observers called a terrifying messiah complex. Every single one of these moments revealed a bizarre, unnerving reality lurking right beneath the charming actor's facade.
You know, the psychology of a microexpression reveals absolutely everything. If we zero in on that infamous 2005 60 Minutes interview with Peter Overton, there's this incredible moment. When Overton asked if Nicole Kidman was the love of his life, the star was visibly rattled. He made this involuntary, unrehearsed movement, literally stabbing his tongue into the side of his cheek. Body language experts will tell you this is a physical block. It signals extreme emotional dissonance. It was a split second of pure panic, where he is literally using his tongue to physically stop himself from lashing out in fury. And in the immediate aftermath of that microexpression, he pushes back hard. He says, "Here's the thing, Peter, you're stepping over a line now." Notice how he uses the reporter's name? It's exactly like a parent warning a disobedient child. He forcefully reasserts control just to shut down what was a completely standard, normal interview question. His eyes blazed with this intense fury that totally mismatched his fake, tight smile. You could almost feel a massive tremor passing through the very skeleton of his public persona.
Section 2. Becoming the persona. So, how does someone get to this point, this extreme, terrifying need for absolute control? Let's look at the underlying psychological frameworks that explain this behavior.
To really grasp this, we need to look at the work of the famous psychologist Carl Jung. Jung defined the persona as the social mask we wear to interact with society. And look, we all have one, right? You probably have a different mask for your boss than you do for your mom or your partner. That's totally normal. But Jung warned that while having a mask is necessary, handing over total control to it, well, that is incredibly dangerous. And that brings us to a crucial clinical state known as psychological dissolution. This is what happens when someone folds their mask entirely into their actual identity. They completely lose themselves. At this point, you can no longer tell where the real self ends and the mask begins. That leaked 2008 internal video we mentioned, it perfectly illustrated this state. The man on that camera wasn't acting. He had completely, totally dissolved into the mask. So a really stark contrast emerges here. On the one hand, we have the highly managed, modern, cool guy. You know the type. He loves memes, he does his own crazy, dangerous stunts, and he saves the world on the big screen. But internally, there's this megalomaniacal belief system. He appears to genuinely believe that he is an elite, real-world savior, an absolute authority on the human mind who must personally cure criminals and single-handedly bring about global peace. It is the definition of total psychological disillusion.
Section 3. The Scientology bubble. But this psychological state doesn't just happen in a vacuum. It requires a massive institutional scaffolding to actively sustain and enforce it. $3 billion. Let that number sink in for a second. That is the staggering estimated wealth amassed by this organization, and it is heavily backed, funded, and legitimized by their single most powerful public figure. He provides them with absolutely unmatched Hollywood power and global prestige. And in return, they provide him with an isolated environment where his savior complex isn't just tolerated, it's treated as absolute, unquestionable reality.
This massive wealth builds a pretty horrifying dynamic. Just contrast the two main groups here. You have the VIPs who live in palatial conditions, constantly serviced by staff and treated literally like deities. But then you have the Sea Org, their so-called voluntary labor force. They live in heavily guarded facilities, often in downright squalor. They're expected to work upwards of 100 hours a week for just $46. Former members have alleged human trafficking, child labor, and conditions comparable to modern-day slavery, all existing just to keep the VIPs perfectly serviced and insulated.
Section 4. The Dark Shadow. Now we need to descend into the darker consequences of living purely as a persona and explore the hidden, alleged abuses happening behind closed doors.
Carl Jung gives us another really critical concept here: the shadow. The shadow is basically the unconscious counterpart to the persona. It acts as a container for all the darkness, the instability, and the narcissism that the cheerful mask tries so desperately to hide. When you build an incredibly strict, rigidly controlled megastar persona, it naturally births an equally unstable, abusive, and furious shadow. And occasionally, that monster breaks loose.
Consider this deeply chilling terminology used by the group, putting ethics in. According to insiders and former members, this isn't about teaching morals. It's an organizational term used to describe brutal physical punishment. The implication is that a physical thrashing is required to recalibrate someone's ethical register. Multiple sources and FBI reports have documented allegations that this megastar personally carried out these brutal beatings against staff members who stepped out of line.
And this terrifying level of control extends way beyond just the staff. Back in 2004, a deeply disturbing, highly orchestrated, multi-step process was allegedly used to literally manufacture his romantic life. Step 1 was an international search for beautiful, malleable followers. Step 2, they held fake movie auditions just to secretly vet the candidates. Step 3, the chosen woman was actually forced to break up with her current boyfriend. And finally, Step 4, she was assigned as a partner to the VIP. These relationships were treated as transactional, corporate projects designed solely to serve his ego.
But one of these chosen partners made a critical error. She simply congratulated him on winning a Medal of Valor from the church. She literally just said, "Very well done." But for the crime of having the audacity to speak to him as an equal, his fragile ego totally imploded. As a punishment, sources claim she was banished to a remote facility and made to scrub toilets with a toothbrush. It really highlights the ultimate narcissist's Achilles heel. They absolutely cannot tolerate anyone who doesn't view them as a supreme deity.
Which brings us to the Great Escape. Eventually, Katie Holmes realized she had to spare her daughter from a life completely controlled by this organization. And the way she got out played out exactly like a Hollywood thriller. She quietly fired her assigned handlers, she secretly secured burner phones, she rented a hidden apartment in New York, and then she waited until the star was completely isolated on a film shoot in Iceland before making her desperate, highly calculated escape. It was literally the only way out of the shadow's terrifying grip.
Section 5. Society's Mirror. Let's pivot the cinematic lens away from the Hollywood star for a moment and point it directly at us, because this extreme case is actually a pretty dark blueprint for our modern world.
You have to ask yourself, why is Tom Cruise still the biggest star on Earth despite everything we've just talked about? Because society rewards the mask. Think about it. When Will Smith broke character and showed real human weakness and unchecked anger at the Oscars, his nice guy persona completely collapsed and he was heavily penalized. But then consider someone like The Rock, who reportedly has a legal contract ensuring his character can never lose a fight on screen. It is absolute persona fusion. Modern society richly rewards those who completely fuse with an invincible, sociopathic persona while severely punishing those who show real human cracks.
And these are the tragic macro-level consequences, the actual symptoms of a sociopathic culture. When absolute commitment to a fake persona is what gets rewarded, our own romantic relationships start becoming transactional, our friendships become performative, we start to experience a complete loss of our true individuality. And this is exactly why there is a spreading global loneliness epidemic right now. We're all just interacting with masks, not actual people.
Which leaves us with one final haunting question. Are you living your life, or is your persona? When you post online, when you show up to work, are you completely blinding yourself with a malfunctioning mask? It is a chilling, hidden reality for all of us to confront. If you enjoy uncovering hidden truths, subscribe to Hidden Reality for more incredible true stories and hidden realities from around the world.